Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone is well wherever they may be in the country, assuming people are still happily locked down at home. I'm just going to wait a few seconds as I can see a few people are joining at the moment, and it will be good that if everyone is here. As it was just pointed out to Claire to me, I could waffle a little through the intro to give people time to join while before Cecile starts on the main topic of the day. Hello and welcome to the third installment in ScotLogic's Women in Tech series. I'm Rob Smith, I'm Client Relationships Director at ScotLogic, and I'm delighted to introduce our guest speaker today, who is Cecile Rousseau, CTO at wealth management company Ruffer. Cecile joined Ruffer in July 2017 as CTO. Prior to this, she was Managing Director at JP Morgan Asset Management Global Technologies, with various roles within equity and multi-asset front office technology. Her current role is to lead the technology transformation at Ruffer, making technology an enabler to the business by developing key digital capabilities, which she's going to talk about today. Today's webinar will be slightly different in format from the usual, but only slightly. By a very strange coincidence, and it was coincidence, I did some consultancy work at Ruffer 10 years ago when it was much, much smaller than it is today. However, many of the experiences Cecile has had, I've also shared, and we've had some amusing sharing of anecdotes between us in planning this. And she's invited me to share some of those along the way today to help illustrate some of the key points. I'll hand you over to Cecile in a minute, but before we start, I'd like to remind you that you can ask questions through the webinar interface. Hopefully you can see that. And Cecile will endeavour to answer as many as possible in the time available. And without further ado, I will hand you over to Cecile. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rob. And hi, everyone. I'm really delighted to attend today. So thank you for inviting me, Rob. So you've got the intro already, but I will cover that really quickly. So I'm Cecile, I'm the CTO at Ruffer. We are a privately owned investment management company founded in '94. And as Rob said, I joined Ruffer nearly 3 years ago. The objective was given when I joined was to transform technology. Ruffer had lagged behind in terms of its investment and wanted to catch up. Now, the move to Ruffer was actually quite a big transition for me. I had worked nearly 25 years in large global American companies whose job it is to do large, transformative, innovative technology changes. And Ruffer in a position is very far away from that. Ruffer is a medium-sized, traditional, very British investment firm, historically serving private clients. These are the high and very high net worth individuals that go to Ruffer because of the trust that they have in the firm and the expectations of high customer service. Now, we actually serve more than just private clients. We serve institutional and charities, and we have approximately 19 billion of assets under management. We are a discretionary asset manager. That means that we are making investment decisions on behalf of our clients. So as a client, you don't have to worry about anything. We look after your money. We make wise investment decisions to preserve your capital. That's our investment strategy. And we look after you as a very valued client. And this level of trusted relationship with clients is really what Ruffer is about. And the theme will actually continue throughout the presentation. So we are a reassuringly traditional firm. Our investment strategy, which is capital preservation, is quite risk adverse and conservative, and we have strong relationship with our clients based on trust. So why do we need digital? And that's really the reason I joined for that challenge. So interestingly, yes, we're traditional in our values and our ethos and investment approach, but we are also quite innovative. And Ruffer is that funny combination of traditional innovation. It's quirky in our terms, and we're actually quite proud of that. And in what way? Well, we're different from the other fund managers. We are contrarians, which means that we go against the flow. against the gregarious, sort of greedy peers that will make quick bucks by following the market. We have a secret sauce, which is we have really thoughtful investment. We have we think long term, and we hedge risks to preserve capital for our clients. And we do that in quite sophisticated investments. I don't know if you follow the news, but I've referred to the news recently with regards to the options on VIX volatility index. That is a hedging strategy, and that really did really well in March during the downturn and saved our clients a lot of money. So investment innovation is actually quite core to what we do. Rob, you've experienced Ruffer firsthand. What were your first impressions?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm just smiling looking at the statement "old-fashioned." I did some work with Ruffer 10 years ago, and when I was engaged, I was invited in to have lunch with the then managing director, the Viscount Tamworth, or Discount Tamworth, as he was known to anyone who negotiated with him, and Miles Marmion, the CFO. They invited me in to have a conversation over lunch. And I'd imagined that we would go into a dull meeting room and have a few sandwiches and a quick conversation. And I turned up to be led to an oak-paneled wall that felt like a room that felt like a gentleman's club, where we had a 4-course meal with aperitif, very fine wine, coffee and petit fours, and just experienced a whole different world. On that day, I turned up in my best suit and smart shoes, and thinking that I actually was made for the part. And it was only later when I started working that it was pointed out to me that brown shoes were considered not smart enough. It was a whole new world that I entered into.
And you're so right. I mean, suits and ties were actually compulsory until a year ago. So imagine my job as head of tech to recruit grads and young techies in suit and tie firms when they had options to go for cool fintechs. I really struggled. It's getting better now, but yeah, that's it. That's absolutely right. So thanks, Rob. So to understand really our digital journey, I think it's quite useful to look at the industry. On one side of the scale, we have the likes of Ruffer, traditional high-touch service-based companies, and on the other, we have the big banks that, the last 2 decades that have been very quick at embarking the high-tech culture. And they saw that as a cost-cutting opportunity. The machines replace staff, you can automate, you can replace, or you can close your branches and replace that with call centers. You have bots rather than relationship managers. And before you know it, you've lost touch with your clients and you've lost their trust. And we know, although that trust is the hardest thing to regain once it's lost. And challenged with competition, those banks are not trying to do a U-turn to try to regain that client relationship. So they're reinvesting into relationship managers, they're training their staff to be nice with clients. But it's interesting that they're faced with the competition of the challenger banks, the Monzo, the Revolut, and the Egg, who are much more nimble and client-centric, and they've actually gained market share. And we'll touch on that a little bit more later on. So Ruffer couldn't be further away from that. Client relationship is what we do. We handwrite notes to clients. We know the names of their kids and their dogs. We invite them for tea and for fine dining. So it's got to be easier for firms like us with a very, very tight relationship with our clients to embark into the journey, the digital journey, rather than those banks that have gone a little bit sort of, quite far into the digital journey, now to try to retain that client relationship. Or at least that's the way we think about it. So we think we're well positioned for that. Now, high tech does not replace high touch. I quite like that sentence. It complements it. And in fact, the more you do high tech, the more you need to do high touch as well. And I'll give you an anecdote for that. We launched our client portal quite shortly after I arrived, which was a big transition from some of our older clients who were not really familiar with all the technology. And we were obviously on point to support them in terms of their login issues and so on. Specifically, Lord White, not his real name, could not log in. So we decided to send our support manager all the way to Wimbledon where he lived to help him. So Laura, our support manager, got into a taxi with a specific mission to sort the login issue. And she ended up spending the afternoon with Lord White around tea and scones, discussing his stories about, his time in the army. Lord White absolutely delighted with the very personal client service that we gave, and obviously the company. And yes, the login issue was resolved as well. So it's quite extreme, but it shows you the length at which Ruffer is able to go for that really client service and the way we know our clients. And I know, Rob, you have your own personal anecdote as well.
Yeah, I love the Wimbledon anecdote, the idea of traveling that far and staying for an hour to have tea and coffee while fixing a problem. We should all do that as part of IT support. I guess my experience was, as part of my learning process when I was engaged by Ruffer, I spent a day working with a fund manager, and I was just staggered that individuals would send handwritten letters in requesting movements of funds, movements of money out of funds to pay for things, would make that transaction and then would write a handwritten letter back. The level of manual intervention was quite staggering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so why is Ruffer going on that digital journey? Well, we have three main objectives. One is to improve client service or to enhance it. The second is to improve the efficiency of our investment process. And the third one is to help the way we work, so to help our staffs, having Ruffer being a good place to work in terms of collaboration tools and so on. Now, we have challenges. And I will touch on three. One is culture, and I'll come back onto that in a sec. The second is that concept of personalization versus customization. Because we don't say no to clients at Ruffer, we've ended up customizing a lot. We do everything that they ask us to do, as you can see. So, is there an opportunity for us as we automate more, we go more digital to streamline our processes, but with that, taking out the personal aspect, the personalization that is really valued by our clients. That's been another challenge we've had. So I'll give you a couple of examples. So for instance, we make payments to third-party accounts. So a client can request, that we pay his window cleaner or his yoga teacher. That's a service we provide, which, it's probably not very common, but that's what we do. And we've started putting a little more rules around that to limit it, not as a cost-cutting exercise, but as a KYC or security question. Another example is we have a lot of complexity around our client metadata. When we have a large family with, wives, ex-wives, grandparents, children who don't always get on, you need to understand who has access to the account, who receives the client reports, and it's very specific to each client. So again, we've tried to simplify that to have clearer rules around, how we programmatically allow those permissions without impacting, obviously, what the client sees, because that's really important for them. And the final example I will have is the reports that client get. Again, very bespoke, because we would do anything they want us to do. If you want blue, we'll have blue. And as we automate that more, we've tried to rationalize. So we have a common reporting engine that does a common report, and we have add-ons as per what the client wants. So we try to make it more efficient without losing the personal aspect. But that's been one of the things that, it's always a little bit sort of mindful in people's mind to say, let's not just automate for the sake of it. Let's keep that personal touch and personalization that clients value. And then the final challenge of culture, I'll come back, the personalization or customization, is really the definition of value, which takes me to the next slide. So I quite like this model here of trust, value, and risk. When you go for digital transformation, you need to demonstrate the value that you are going to deliver as per the sort of agile sort of processes. You need to understand the risk, but you also need to consider how that sort of program is going to enhance the trust with your clients. That's not often something that we look at, but it's so important for us at Ruffer that we have that as another element to our program of work. So you can look at it from a project perspective or from a portfolio perspective to make sure that across all your projects, those three elements are actually preserved. So value, how do you measure value has been something which maybe resonates with everyone. How do you prioritize based on value? It's not something we've done very well but in the past, but as part of our agile sort of journey, we've had to define what that means for us. And for us, it's really our ability to meet our firm priorities. We add value if it allows us to get closer to our firm priorities. The next one is trust. How do you measure that? How do you have a visibility of the impact of your project onto the trust with clients? And something we're still struggling with. How do we get feedback from clients? And interestingly, when you look at the challenger banks that we've discussed, the Mongo, Egg, Revolut, they actually do that well, but they do that through social media. So they would post on Facebook or on Instagram, we've just released this feature, tell us what you think about it, and they're able to react really quickly. They're very agile from that perspective. So how do we do it for us? Well, we've put a feedback sort of feature on our client portal to say, just give us your feedback. But I still don't think we're doing enough of that, and something we're working on. And I would be really interested if people have got stories or ideas or examples of what they've done that could help. If you want to put that onto the chat box and share your experience, it'd be really useful. So something, Rob, as well, you've pointed out, which is, with that amount of personal data, how do we deal with GDPR?
Yeah, this is something that you highlighted to me, and I hadn't really spotted it, Cecile, but it was only thinking back to, as I mentioned, when I spent my day with a fund manager, they would have telephone calls, and the telephone call would be like a friendly conversation, probably as one might imagine in the old days in a small village bank where everyone knew everyone. And the conversation would be, oh, how's your daughter's wedding planning coming? How's Freddie the dog? Has his leg healed? How are the kids getting on at Harrow? The amount of personal information that is held by the fund managers and known by the fund managers is quite staggering. And of course, is that really, it's essential to business? Well, it is the relationship, and therefore, what impact does that have on GDPR? Mm-hmm. And clearly, trust is the important thing there. Trust is the thing that allows you to carry that through.
Mm-hmm. So the way we've handled it is we've made sure that all this detailed information that is, necessary or helpful for fund managers is not actually disseminated anywhere else. So only the fund managers have access to those client files. But yes, the level of detail we have is quite staggering. Absolutely right. So going back to my earlier point on culture, I think that's important, especially coming from Ruffer, where the culture is very strong. So how do you get people to think differently, to experiment new ways of doing things, and to understand even what's possible when people have been brought up in the Ruffer culture, which is, so strong based on, you have to have face-to-face meetings, you have to handwrite notes. Even when you're in the office, we encourage face-to-face conversations rather than emails, because there's a better way of actually communicating with people. So, how do we make people be more innovative? And I'm just bring that model here because I quite like it, and it makes me feel actually quite good. The reason is that innovation is not only disruptive and radical. Yeah, you can have an incremental innovation, which is really what we've been doing. So it's a small set of changes, a small set of steps towards change. That's is still innovation. And that's really what we've been doing, including from a cultural perspective, to make people realize, as we go, that we can make small step change. And then COVID has arrived, and we've done probably more innovation in the last 3 months than in the whole of last year. And why? Because we didn't have a choice. Yeah. So suddenly all these sacrosanct principles around face-to-face meetings and have just gone out of the window. So, COVID has been a catalyst for digital innovation on 2 main fronts. One has been the digital client service, and the other has been our end user technology, probably similar to quite a lot of firms. but more importantly for us, because we were so far behind, I guess. So on the client reports, we used to have glossy reports, which are printed, bound, checked, and stuffed in envelopes together with our investment review and a personal letter for clients. And it's a 2-week process every quarter where the firm is at a standstill. There's paper everywhere in meeting rooms, which are locked, and we have to send those reports at the end of the 2 weeks. So with COVID, obviously, no ability to print. We've had to go paperless in the space of 4 weeks. We've had to onboard into our client portal all our remaining clients and put all the relevant information on our portal, which has been amazing in terms of how much we've been able to achieve in such a short space of time. Rob, I know you did witness that valuation process firsthand yourself.
Oh, absolutely. So obviously Ruffer was a fraction of the size it is today, but it used to take 48 hours to print out, and the whole organization was around that. And if there was a problem with the print run, it all restarted and it took another 48 hours. It was quite a staggering process.
Yeah, exactly. So client meetings has been the second of big innovation. We wine and dine our clients in our posh client rooms. We had actually a big refurbishment plan this year, which has been cancelled. Why? Because we now do Zoom meetings with clients. And then finally, collaboration. At Ruffer, we're family and we have family lunch. And literally all the partners meet every month to have lunch, and we have wine as well. And it's really core to our culture to sort of meet and act as a family. So imagine now the change of culture. We now have team channels and video conferences. So what is coming next? Well, the motto is let's not waste a good crisis, and I'm being it from a business angle, not a personal angle, by the way. I think what we've learned is that we can innovate fast if we put our mind to it and if we really focus. And so the question is, well, how do we capitalize on this momentum? And what we've done is we've actually sat down and rethink our priorities. If we are going to try to accelerate what is important for us, let's just focus on those core things. So first of all, being paperless. Yeah, so we try to automate our entire client reporting process, from the validation of the performance data to the concatenation of the documents to the upload into the client portal without a click. We're working on digital onboarding and secure messaging with our clients. The greater digital presence is interesting because Ruffer traditionally has not done any of that. No marketing, it's all word of mouth. We have a very strong figurehead, which is Jordan Ruffer, who's our founder. And we now effectively try to move into the 21st century, where we have more visible people on our website. If you go, we've just launched our new website. We try to now put on the forefront more investors. So being sort of going from investor, from founder-led to founder-inspired. So the founder is becoming, less at the forefront. We're trying to move people up and be more visible. We've just launched our Ruffer radio, and we, doing a webcast, which is huge for us. And we have a marketing department as well. So it's really huge. And finally, mobile workforce, working anytime, anywhere. And we see our culture with innovation. We've just done our first hackathon end of last year, which is hugely successful. People really thought it was fun and collaborative, and another way of actually co-creating with people from different sort of backgrounds. So to close, I just wanted to go back to the industry view because I think it's quite interesting. I've got two axes here, what's innovation, the other one is client-centric. So we have the incumbents, the banks, that are really trying to regain that client centricity and becoming more agile as well. This is, most of the time have got a lot of legacy. We have the traditional high-touch firms like us who are very client-centric and are trying to move up the digital and agile sort of journey. And then we have the challenger banks, the Mongo and the Egg and so on. Interestingly, they don't have a very close client relationship. In fact, they don't have at all. They don't know their clients. And the clients are not very loyal. You switch from one to the other quite easy. But what they've done is they've actually developed a client centricity model, which is interesting. And what I mean by that is that they're close to what people want, and they develop features to make the product more appealing to their clients. So it's all on mobile, there's ease of use, it's very reactive to the client feedback loop that we discussed. They're very innovative and release really quickly features and react to feedback. If something is not working, they just change it very quickly. And it's something we can learn from my perspective, on how to adjust, to that innovative agility process. Something we're trying to do more of. So, in summary, I continue to think that Ruffer is really well positioned for the future, precisely because we've been able to retain that client trust, which is really core to what we do.
Yeah.
So, all for me as it stands, leaving a bit of time for questions and more. Rob, back to you.
Thank you very much, Cecile. That was fantastic. Thank you. And I have to say, there were a few takeaways, but for me, I loved your statement, move from a founder-led to a founder-inspired organization, because I think we're going on a similar journey, actually, at Scott Logic. And also, I know Jonathan Ruffer reasonably well, and I can imagine that there is a time where he'll want to hand over those reins. If anyone would like to ask questions now, while you're thinking about them, just to let you know that the next webinar is on the 17th of June, and that will be Manila McLean, who is CIO of the Newcastle Building Society, another organization going through a similar and yet completely different transformation in a number of ways. We have, I think, a couple of minutes left, and we have a couple of questions coming through. Sorry, this is where I have to read my screen. Cecile, what do you think the biggest long-term impact of COVID will be on Ruffer?
I'm hoping it's culture. I'm hoping is that statement I made, which was, if we really want to do something, one, we need to aim high, because we can make it happen. If we really want to get something done, let's just focus on it and put our minds to it, and we get it done. I mean, the example of moving everybody from printed report to the client portal in 4 weeks, nobody would have thought it was possible. And when you stop everything else and do that one thing, you make it happen really quickly. So I'm really hoping that we keep that level of agility in the firm, and we've shown that it's possible to do that.
Yeah, I think we're all hoping that, actually, in some way, aren't we? And similarly, do you think remote working will become something that you will do more of?
Yeah, another interesting point. We think of that as it stands. I think the level of expectation from our staff is probably going to be, we're going to continue in a hybrid mode for a while, and people are going to, claim with right reasons that it's very possible to work remotely. Something which we didn't do at Ruffer. The flexible working arrangements or features were put in a year ago as well. So before that, you had to be in the office. So it's a huge change. But yeah, I would expect that. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And do you see any? Oh, sorry.
With that losing, as the family sort of culture is so important. I don't think we will, allow people to work from home the whole time, but having a hybrid model, certainly. Yeah.
Yes, more flexibility. And do you see any security issues around that, given the information that you have and the value of the funds that you're managing?
We haven't seen that. I think the main focus for us during the lockdown has been to really ensure that there's enough user awareness of the phishing sort of attempts from people who wanted to benefit from the fact that everybody was, the world was different, and people who just had lost a little bit their working environment. So it's been a lot more about making sure people didn't lose track of the fact that they had to be as vigilant as when they were in the office. But other than that, we have strong sort of security measures where they are loss protection. We're not allowing printing at home, which is an issue. We're trying to see how that could be adapted a little bit, because it is difficult for people. So no, in overall it's worked well, yeah, but we have to adjust, I think, a couple of a couple of constraints that we have.
Yeah, that sounds fascinating. Well, I think we're out of time now. That has been a really excellent webinar. Thank you very much, Cecile. Thank you everyone for joining us. And I look forward to seeing you all on the 17th. Thank you again.
Thanks so much. Bye.